And so here we come to what Tet prophesied of in the Spirit. This is from Besorat Yochanan, chapter 4, verses 7 through 10. So that's the Gospel of John, chapter 4, 7 through 10. So we have well accounts before, right? So we have the account later, Jacob rolling away the stone at a well, right? And according to the Midrash, right, he's very strong and he's able to move the great stone by himself. And so he meets his bride to be. He meets Rachel at a well, right? And we also have in this case the bride of Isaac is at a well, right? This is where Rivqah was, and there's a very interesting kind of counter distinction that's made between those stories and the stories. The story of what happens, and I mean true story, of what happens with Yeshua encountering a woman at the well. I think you'll find that the Samaritan woman, in many ways, she's like the anti-Rivqah. Right? She's like the opposite of Rachel. She's the opposite of Rivqah, right? But still, you have the framework of the story. It's interesting how we have, again, an interesting exchange at a well. Right. Thank you, Doc. Good addition. I felt I was missing a well story, and Doc Vera provided the support. My wingman there, Moshe met his bride at the well. That's right, Moshe Rabbeinu. He met remember that he had to fight off the shepherds. And because her father was the priest of Midian and he was a monotheist already. Our tradition says that, because if you think about it, why were his daughters having to go to the well? If he's the priest, he should be respected, he should be wealthy, he should have male employees. But it turned out that nobody in Midian wanted to work for a monotheist. So they had kind of done a ban against Yithro. And so that's why his daughters had to go and do it themselves. Why Rivka's at the well? Who knows? It's probably because of the prayer, right? And it's interesting. I believe that prayers can even affect the past, right? That our prayer life, when you say a prayer, you can affect the past. So let's say that somebody asked you to please pray for me. I have an exam today at such and such a time, right? Okay. And let's say something happened. You had an emergency and you didn't pray for them. But you don't know the result yet, right? This is kind of getting quantum physics-y. It's like quantum physics, but you don't know the result yet. You don't know how they did. I believe it's still okay to pray for them. It's still useful. You can still say, oh, God, maybe your will that today at 2 p.m., even though now it's 3, at 2 p.m., that so-and-so did really well in the exam. Because God is outside of time, why not? You don't know the reality of what happened there yet. The only limitation really is our faith. Because the Messiah teaches us, if you have faith just the size of a mustard seed, you can say to the mountain, be removed. It'll be removed, right? Who's ever seen that kind of faith, mountains being moved? Of course, this is probably a metaphor, but nevertheless, just having our faith, what usually impedes our faith is knowledge of the illusion of reality that's around us. Vickoy says after this, she's got to hang out at the well. Yeah, I agree with you, Daniel. Daniel says, I was thinking Eliezer was testing the hospitality. That's right. But think how hard it must have been for he and his men to not offer to help her, right? And think what she's thinking. I wonder what Rivka was thinking in those moments. Can you imagine? Golly, these guys aren't lifting a finger to help me. Myself. I wonder if she was a little miffed inside, but still, she's a good girl. And she still wanted to do the right thing, right? Maybe she's making excuses for them. Oh, they're exhausted from their journey or whatever. So because the effect of prayer is limited only by our believing that the thing can happen, that our trusting, our bitachon, our confidence in Hashem, that the thing can really happen, when you already know what happened, you already know the person failed their test, let's say, and then you decide to pray for them, this is problematic, right? Who could have the kind of faith to possibly overcome what you already know has happened? This is why the miracle of raising the dead is such a wonderful example of absolute faith. When someone can pray and ask God to raise the dead and they really believe he's going to do it, right? You remember, Yeshua is always asking people, do you believe I can do this thing, right? And they say, I do, and then he does it, right? He does it. But we're also told in other places he doesn't do miracles because they did not believe he was capable, right? Their faith was too minimal. And so this is why I think it's possible you can pray for a past event if you do not know the result of that event yet. Not saying that you should slough and not pray when they need you to pray. It's very powerful to say psalms for someone or to pray for someone while they're having a struggle, right? During their exam, for example, right? Or during their the biopsy at the hospital, right? Or during their whatever blood test is going on. It's very good to be praying right then. But if you mess up and you didn't do it, as long as you do not know the result, your prayer can still have positive impact on the person. Ted says it's a good idea to pray when asked. Don't delay, right? I like that. Yeah, I usually do that too, so that you don't forget, right? The short prayer, you say the short one then, but maybe you say the full psalm, yeah, as well. And by the way, today, as our sister recommended to say the psalm for Ukraine, this very good suggestion, because if you don't have the words, saying a psalm, the psalms are very, very, very powerful. The power of a psalm, reciting psalms for someone when they're sick, reciting psalms for someone when there's warfare going on, right? Reciting psalms for someone when they're wrestling for their very soul, right? Can be very, very powerful weapon used in spiritual warfare. Okay, so let's look at our woman at the well then. All right, so John 4 verse 7 says, hudor. There arrived, right? This is very interesting. So this is kind of an interesting weak Gezerah Shava to our Torah portion today, which says VaAvo. Then I arrived. So here we have the same underlying verb. There arrived in Hebrew ba'a. There arrived a woman from Samaria, drawing water, to draw out water. Keener comments that the woman came alone. The fact that she came alone would underline the likelihood that she was not welcome among the other women, right? If you think about this woman at the well, also the time of day. The time of day was very hot. All right, we get the scene set in the verses before this. It's the time of day when people don't go to wells. They don't go out when the sun is at its zenith to draw water. They come in the late afternoon or they come in the morning. So the fact that she is there now, it shows that she's some kind of woman that other Samaritan women don't want to be around. And I don't know if you know about not, but the Samaritans were very religious. They were very religious people. Right? They believed in the Torah. Right? We have Samaritan Torahs today. Sometimes the critical textual apparatus, it will refer to the Samaritan Torah says this, right? You'll say it says that or whatever. But they rejected the Nach, just like these Tzedukim, the Sadducees rejected the prophets and the writings. So did the Samaritans. They rejected it, and they had some other weird things. Their calendar was off a bit, kind of like Hebrew roots today. The calendar's off a bit, and they believed that that their mountain was the right mountain and not Jerusalem, right? So some strange things like that. So they've got some goofiness, and Yeshua, he rebukes them for it, right? He's like, you're wrong. Salvation's from Jews. It's like, you don't know what you're praying about, right? We know. So we'll get to that. So anyway, so we kind of already have an understanding, even before the text tells us the revelation that Yeshua says to her. We already understand there's something about this woman that other ladies don't want to be associated with her. They don't want her unrighteousness or whatever rubbing off on them. Ted says, in a sense, the Samaritans were more zealous for God. Right. They're very zealous. They were very zealous. Yeah. And sexual promiscuity, that kind of stuff, did not sit well with them. Okay. My laser pointer keeps going away. Come on, laser pointer. There we go. Legial teho Jesus dos moi pain. Hogan matetaya to apelu lesa. Eistain polenina trophas. So Yeshua said to her, give to me to drink. And now we have kind of a subnote, right? So a Jewish reader in those days, right, reading the Masoret Yochanan, say in 90 AD, right, when they think it was written around 90 AD, but who knows? We don't really know. So assuming it was written around 90 AD, they're reading this, and they'd say, what? He's talking to a woman? You see? This would be the Jewish cultural response. Why is he talking to this woman, right? Especially this woman, right? You know what I'm saying? She's there, she's alone. We understand why other ladies don't want to be around her, right? It's not because she farts a lot or something, okay? There's something else. There's another reason why she's alone. So then we get this little subtext that says, because his disciples had left to go into the city for the purpose of acquiring food. Lege unauto hekune, he Samarites, posu, ialdaius, honpar emu, pain aites, gunaikos Samaritinos usis. He's like saying, how is it that you, a Jew, from me, ask to drink? And now she clarifies the me part a little bit more. A woman who is a Samaritan is. A woman Samaritan is, yes. So she's also surprised because not only the male-female thing, but Jews didn't like the Samaritans, right? There's kind of this bad blood. Because if you know the history of the Samaritans, they're mixed. They're mixed. They're not just Hebrew. They're mixed with other stuff. But it's not just like, it's not really a racism thing. They're mixed because when the invading powers came to take away everybody to Babylonia, those guys didn't get taken away, right? Their ancestors, rather. And then when Babylonians and others, they ended up living in Israel, they mixed with those people. So it was seen as a great act of disloyalty to Israel. So that's why they were despised, right? That's why we have Yeshua giving parables about like a Levi passes by and he doesn't help the guy who got beat up, right? Priests pass by, they don't help, but a Samaritan helps him, right? Who is his fellow, right? Who is his neighbor, right? And so he kind of clarifies, well, obviously the one who helped him is more of a neighbor, right? Even though he's a Samaritan, right? Because Yeshua, he also doesn't approve, right? He's not approving the Samaritans. If you read his words coming up, he's not a fan. He's not a fan of their theology, you can tell. But he's also not a fan of the Shammite theology in Judah. So this is my comment here. Asking Yeshua, so he asked for a drink, right? Now let's compare this to Eliezer asking Rivkah for a drink. What's Rivkah do? She gives him a drink. She gives the other guys who are with him a drink. She gives all the camels drink, right? Okay. What does this lady do? Yeshua asks her for some water. She is really like an anti-Rivkah. She's like, why are you asking me? Like, later she'll say, you don't even have a bucket, right? So it's like, you're not going to use my bucket? Ew. So it's kind of strange. And then she's already calling out the differences. You're different from me. You're a Jew. I'm Samaritan, right? We don't have dealings with each other. Like, how dare you? Who are you to think that you could ask me for water? And then again, the narrator, Yochanan, he gives us a little subtext here. He says, Ugar sukhronontai iodayu Samaritais. Okay, so he's saying why she's acting this way. He says, because Jews and Samaritans, they don't mix, right? They don't have dealings together. That's what this sukhrontai means. They don't deal things together. They don't do things together. So Yeshua answered her, saying, E ides ten dorion to theu, kaitis esten holegon soy, dos moi pain. Su an eitisas outen, kai edokenan su hudor zone. If you knew the gift of God and the one who's talking to you, saying, give me to drink, then you would ask of him, and he would give to you hudor zone. And this, of course, is a famous phrase, the hudor zone. We have it all over the place. There's all kinds of ministries with that in the name. Okay, it's out of order. Sorry, don't look at my next comment yet. Okay, out of order. So mayim chayim, right? Is the Hebrew there? Mayim chayim. So we interpret that very literally in Hebrew. It says living water, right? Living water, living waters. And you've probably seen this all over the place, living water. Okay, so Dr. Ur says, how did the Samaritan know Yeshua was a Jew? She must have seen him wearing tzitzit, according to, right, yeah, exactly, his dress, probably. And also, Jews probably looked a little bit different than Samaritans. I mean, they had mixed with Babylonians, right? We didn't mix. So there could also be that. Well, yeah, for sure. The style of the tzitzit probably too, because Samaritans also wore tzitzit, right? But they would have had a different way of tying it or something like this, right? And Tom says she knows about Yeshua's tzitzit, and he says, yeah, that's right. That's right. So this mayim chayim, it's really been like religious. It's like religious language today, right? You have living waters ministries, right? And whenever you talk to like a spiritual or a Bible-based denomination and you say living waters, people know what you're talking about. They know there's a spiritual end here. But that's only because of the Hebrew's influence on English. In Hebrew, mayim chayim doesn't necessarily mean anything spiritual. It just means waters with a natural source. So, for example, a river is mayim chayim, right? A river that's not, that has a natural source, right? Or hot springs are mayim chayim. Even the ocean is mayim chayim, right? And of course, this is what we require for mikvah. We need mayim chayim. It's just living waters is translating it quite literally into English. You could just translate this. This is really what he's saying to her. So she's not totally stupid, okay? We have to understand. He's speaking Hebrew to her. He says, I would have given you, and now let's make it sound like it does in English. In Hebrew. He would have given to you spring water. That's kind of what he's saying. He would have given you spring water. Okay, so now she doesn't sound totally stupid with the next follow-up. And by the way, to understand why we have this kind of subtext where John is telling us up above, because his disciples, they went away into the town for food, right? He's telling us why Yeshua is talking to her, because we have to understand, in Jewish culture, here's an example from the pirqei Avot, from the Mishnah. Mishnah Avot, chapter 1, verse 5. Okay, it says, this rabbi, Yosef ben Yochanan, used to say, let thy house be wide open, and let the poor be members of thy household. Engage not in too much conversation with women. They said this with regard to one's own wife. How much more does the rule apply with regard to another man's wife? From here, the sages said, as long as a man engages in too much conversation with women, he causes evil to himself. He neglects the study of Torah, and in the end, will inherit Gehenna. So, of course, we have to understand, this is from a time period where women didn't really study Torah, right? Women weren't studying the Bible, this kind of stuff. They were busy doing women's work. Get in that kitchen and cook my dinner, woman. Like, that was kind of what the roles they were stuck in, right? So I think we can loosen this today, as most Messianic congregations do not forbid men and women to have lengthy conversations, because women today, they're in a different situation. It's kind of like, the verse where Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, says, it is a shame for a woman to speak in the congregation, in the ekklesia, right? Okay, so some denominations today, they don't let women speak. Not allowed to talk, right? I think really what's happening is in those days, it's kind of like this. In Jewish understanding, it's you treat a scholar a certain way, right? You treat scholars a certain way, right? You treat, so someone who knows a whole lot of stuff, you treat them a certain way. You try not to waste their time, right? For example. And this is seen as improper derekh eretz if you do this. If you're always bothering a scholar or whatever, you're taking their time when they could be doing, study for the kingdom or whatever. Okay. So Paul, he comes from this worldview, right? This idea that someone who's a scholar, you don't bother them, right? Okay. So Paul, he has various rules that he implements in the congregations, right? That seem to have to do with, one, how much time a person has, and two, if that person is knowledgeable or not, right? And so he writes about it being a shame. You guys, you're turning to pagan courts. You can't decide it yourself, because he understands there's at least a few people who know the Torah in the congregation. And so they can set up a beit din and they can make these decisions themselves rather than have to go to pagan court, right? You're not supposed to turn someone over to a heathen court system, right? You're not supposed to sue somebody, for example, in a pagan court system. It should be in the religious court, right? And so I think what's happening when Paul makes a statement about women, you have to understand, in that culture, the location he's writing to, in those times, women were often illiterate. It was like a different kind of woman than we have today. And this is not feminism, this is not anything, it's just saying that today everybody has more access to education, don't we? Right? We all have Bibles, right? Back then, nobody had a Bible. You have to understand, it's a different time. Nobody had access to the scriptures unless they went to the synagogue, and then maybe the synagogue had that scroll and you could learn from it, right? Kind of like a library type setting. But nobody had it at home. Only the extremely wealthy had, for example, even a Torah, right? Because you have no photocopy machines, there's no internet, none of this stuff. So today the situation's a bit different. Not only can our men be more educated than they were back then, but our women also, right? So today, Jewish girls get taught to read Hebrew. They have bat mitzvahs where they read and interpret from the Torah. We have all of these things that happen, right? So it's a different scenario. So back then, an ignorant person, let's just say, instead of a woman, it's a shame for an ignorant person to blah, blah in the synagogue, right? To like disrupt the discussion. You understand? So I think that sets the proper context for what's happening with Paul. So the same thing here is happening with mayim chayim. Okay. Yep, Thomas, mayim chayim is the Torah, the living word. That's true. That's true. We use that, the drinking from mayim chayim, the sages use this as a metaphor, right? That you either drink from mayim chayim, which is the deep trough of the sages, right? The deep well of the sages, or someone drinks from poisonous waters, right? This is mayim rosh, poisonous waters, right? Not the rosh meaning the head, but rosh meaning poison, right? Drinking from poisonous waters, that's the waters of heresy, right? Of false teachings, etc. And so the water has this life-giving power, either unto life because the teaching is good, or unto death if it's a heresy, right? If it teaches blasphemy or something like this. So this is why the following conversation happens, because she thinks he's talking about spring water. Okay, so it's not just a stupid woman or something. She's not. He says, I'll give you some spring water and you'll never be thirsty again. Right. So now she responds. Now we don't know if she's being sarcastic now or not. If she's being snooty or not, it's certainly possible. It's really possible. But she responds with legi auto hegune. So the woman then said to him, Kurie. Uto atleme eches, kai to freya est in bathu. Posted une eches to hudor to zone. Me su maid zone, e tu patro semun Jacob. Post edoken emun. Pardon me. Hemen to freya, kai autos ex auto, e pen kai oi hui auto, kai ta frema ta auto. It's funny, she gets such a long list, right? So she said, the woman then said to him, "Oh Lord," right? Maybe she said, "Rabbi," we don't know. There's not a bucket that you have, right? And the well is deep. From where then do you possess hudor tozon, the living water, the mayim chayim? Is it that you are greater than our father Yaakov, who gave to us the well, and who from it drank, and his sons and his livestock? All right, so I was laughing that she says all this stuff, right? Wouldn't enough to say our father Jacob gave it to us? But she's going on. I think she's trying to show that she's a little knowledgeable, right? Have you ever seen this when you're talking to a sinner, right? Someone who's really in sin, and they find out you're a religious person, right? Maybe they see how you're dressed, or maybe they see your aura or something like this, whatever, and they start suddenly wanting to show that they know something about the Bible too. There's a certain personality type that's like this, right? They want to kind of show off this knowledge. I think that's why she's going on and on and on. I think Yeshua got it when she said, "Are you greater than our father Yaakov who gave us the well?" Right? That's enough, right? And said she wants to show she knows some of the story. Oh, and also he drank, and his sons drank, and the livestock drank, and and all their cousins drank, and everyone kept on drinking, and a good time at the well. So now we get the answer. So then Yeshua answered, he said to her, Paso pinonek tu hudatos tautu, deep se sepam, and everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again. Hoste an pie ek tu hudatos uego doso auto, ume dipse se eis ton iona, alato hudor hodoso auto genesetai, and auto pe ge hudatos alomenu eis zoin ionion. Anybody who drinks from this water will become thirsty again, but if he should drink from the water which I will give to him, he will not be thirsty for all eternity. But the water which I give to him will bubble up, bubble up in him as a pege hudatos, as a spring, an ion of water, which is bubbling for eternal life, zoin ionion. Lege pros auton, hegune kurie, dos moitauto tohudo, hina me dipso me de diechomenai, and thade antlein. Okay, so then she said to him, the woman said to him, O Lord, give to me this water, so that I will thirst no more and don't have to keep coming to here to draw up water. Legiate, he said to her, Upage phonesin ton adrasu, kai el theantate. Okay, depart and call your man, call your husband, that he will come hither. Hold on. So on this first part up in blue, when Yeshua is talking about, Yeshua likes to use double entendres with people, right? This is why he used the mayim chayim statement with her. On the surface, it has one meaning, but in spiritual language, it has another meaning, right? It's not just spring water. He's not going to give her Ozark, or what do we have here? He's not going to give them, I don't know, one of the local spring waters, right? He does the same thing with Nicodemus. Remember we had the talk with Nicodemus? When he says, you must be born anothen, in the Greek anothen, which can mean again, and that's what Nicodemus thinks he's saying. He thinks he's saying born again, but it also means from above. So Yeshua, he likes to do this with people sometimes. In whatever language he's speaking. With Nicodemus, he's speaking Greek. With this woman, he's clearly speaking Hebrew. And so he does these little play on words, right? Because Greek doesn't have the living water, so it wouldn't work, right? So it's clear that it's Hebrew he's speaking to her. And so with Nicodemus, to this day, people still, they say, are you born again, brother? They still make Nicodemus his error. Yeshua's not saying to be born again. He's saying to be born from above, right? Those who are born from above, they desire what's in heaven, right? Those who are born of the earth have desires for things of the earth, right? So we should be saying, are you born from above, right? That's the real thing. But people, they get caught up on the translation from it. So he does the same thing with this woman. That's something I wanted you to see. There's a reason why he's doing that, right? He wants her to be ignorant for a bit longer, and then suddenly the light comes on. Now, the Jerusalem Targum, the Jerusalem Targum in the Aramaic in Genesis 28:10, this is just a chunk of it, it says there were 5 signs that had been given to our father Yaakov, right? And I want to share with you the 5th sign. The 5th sign, after our father Yaakov had lifted the stone from the mouth of the well overflowed. It was overflowing for 20 years. All the days that our father Yaakov dwelled in Haran. Right? And so this is possibly why the woman also makes this comparison to Yaakov, because she is aware of this legend, right? We have this Jewish understanding that the well was supernaturally overflowing, right, from Jacob's time, that it just kept coming and coming and coming. So she's thinking maybe he's saying, I won't be thirsty, meaning there'll be so much water, it's easy to get, you don't have to draw it from the deep well, something like that. Keener comments, at a different well, Jacob provided water for the flocks, but Yeshua provides water for whoever would drink, perhaps alluding to the Johannine portrait of disciples as Yeshua's sheep. Jacob allegedly gave this parcel of land to Joseph. So Keener's pointing out that there's even a deeper analogy that goes with us. We have this kind of conflict with Yeshua and the woman, right? Where coming up in the conversation, he's going to say, you don't know what you're talking about, you Samaritans, right? Salvation is from Judah, right, or from the Jews, right? It's got nothing to do with what you're saying. But at the same time, his comments about the mayim chayim that he will give, the one that will bubble up in people, right? Like, and it makes me think of the Proverbs. We have this proverb that says that my spirit bubbles up within me, oh God, right? The spirit is growing stronger because of the spiritual nourishment it's getting. That this is hinting at the induction of the Gentiles into the kingdom, right? That we're going to have this phase where the waters that Yeshua is offering people, in other words, the teachings that Brother Tom was alluding to, the mayim chayim being his teaching, his instruction, his interpretation of Torah, and ultimately his death and resurrection, that this will be the key so that even the Samaritans can come into the kingdom, and that even non-Samaritans can come in. That anyone, Yeshua says anyone, he doesn't say any Jew, that anyone who drinks from these waters that I give to him will have Zoin Ionion, eternal life.
This is the end of part 1 from our drash. Study with us 9 times a week, twice on Shabbat, once on Sunday, once on Monday, once on Tuesday, twice on Wednesday, once on Thursday, and once on Friday. This is a Messianic Torah Renaissance. Kol kavod l'Adonai.